Welcome in. This is Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano, and thank you so much for joining me here on yet another edition of the MidWeek Blitz.
Blitzing. He's picked up. Here comes another one. Bolton coming after him. And the pass is intercepted.
It's a 500 edition of the MidWeek Blitz as the Kansas City Chiefs are 2-2 after back-to-back wins. One in New York against the Giants and one at home, an absolute butt-whipping of the Baltimore Ravens. We'll start off with a little bit of that, but we'll also get to every single storyline surrounding the Kansas City Chiefs this week and get you ready for Chiefs-Jags. Monday Night Football in Jacksonville, a surprising team, the Jags, sitting at 3-1. We'll get to all of that coming up, including the AFC West race coming in just a couple of minutes. But first, it is so much fun to watch everyone break their necks to try to find reasons why the Chiefs being 2-2 and crushing the Ravens really isn't that big of a deal. They say, there was a lot of injuries. Even people stepping out and saying, well, Cooper Rush was at quarterback. Yeah, Cooper Rush was at quarterback after it was 37-13. Cooper Rush actually made that score look better than Lamar Jackson did. But still, we will have all the haters out there because they were at one point just a couple of weeks ago so happy about the demise of the Chiefs dynasty. And now they're stuck having to see that this dynasty is far from over. And you know what? A lot of people deserve credit for that, for the dynasty not ending. But there's one man who deserves it above all, and we'll get to him in just a couple of minutes. But it has been fun to watch everyone just go, oh no, wait a minute. I think the Chiefs are still bad, especially because the resurgence of Patrick Mahomes statistically is now driving everybody nuts. Because last year people wrote Patrick off. They did. They said, this guy's washed. He's not what he used to be. Oh, look at the numbers. These are people who don't watch games. And I'll tell you this, something not enough people talk about. National media people, they're lazy. I am dead serious. They watch 5-minute highlight packages. They have no idea what happened in the games, and then they come out and pretend to be experts. The vast majority of these people, there are exceptions, but the vast majority of the people you see on national television don't watch full games. So they come out with their tired-ass narratives about Patrick Mahomes and about everybody else because they don't have eyes on the game. Or they're just that inept. It's one or the other. Right? Because you can't be watching those games and be an intelligent football fan and tell me that Patrick Mahomes fell off. Because during last year, Mahomes was the offense. The only reason the Chiefs scored any points was because of Patrick Mahomes. Because his top two wide receivers went down before the end of September. Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. So he was out there making chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. And people were going, oh, I think he's fallen off. Yeah, because you read a stat sheet and pretended to know what the heck you were talking about. So Patrick Mahomes silencing all those people, which you could call them haters, I just call them ignorant. Because had they actually watched the games, I believe they would have had a more intelligent take. But they didn't. But you know what those people are doing now? They're looking at 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers, almost 300 yards passing and going, oh, maybe we were wrong. Yeah, you were. We'll get to something the Chiefs have that is always good and always underrated, and we'll get to it in just a minute because it's such an interesting thing, a huge strength for the Chiefs that nobody thought was going to be a strength coming into the season. But first, the Chiefs are in the AFC West race after the Chargers got exposed by the New York Giants. That's what that was, by the way. I know Jackson Dart's going to be a pretty solid quarterback, at least in the NFL. He has the talent. I think Cam Scatterboo is probably everyone's favorite new running back. We're all just hoping that Cam is like immune to CTE. That's true. We're all hoping Cam Scatterboo is immune to CTE because the way he runs, oh my God, his career is not going to last longer than 3 years. He needs to be Superman in order to run like that consistently. But my goodness, what a fun team to watch. And they exposed the LA Chargers, who were fool's gold. I said it right here on the MidWeek Blitz last week when the Chargers were 3-0. They're fool's gold. They were lucky to beat the Chiefs. They were lucky to beat the Broncos, who aren't that good of a team. So the Chargers, even though they're atop the AFC West, I believe the Chiefs are still by a pretty solid margin, the best team in the AFC West.
Pass in zone, caught, touchdown, Hollywood Brown, number 4 for Mahomes.
And building on that, we will do a live on TikTok during the Chargers and the Commanders game on Sunday afternoon. We'll also do a live for Chiefs Jags on Monday Night Football. But I'm sitting around Sunday. We might as well wear our Chiefs stuff and start rooting for the Washington Commanders, because the fact is the Chargers, despite not being as good of a team as the Kansas City Chiefs, they still sit atop the AFC West standings. And that means we are rooting for every single team that plays against the Los Angeles Chargers. So join me on TikTok at Mike Bassano if you want to watch that game live with me, and we'll have a ball rooting against the LA Chargers. Go Commanders. It's the dumbest name in football. It just is. Oh, man. Now, the one man who should be given all the credit in the world for the Chiefs still being a dynasty. We'll tell you who that is coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But first, the point of the Chiefs, the one thing the Chiefs always have, despite the personnel, is a strong secondary. You have to give everybody credit, including Steve Spagnuolo, because they've lost L'Jarius Sneed. They've lost Justin Reed. Yet still, every year, every week, the Chiefs have a dominant secondary, a back end of the defense that holds it down and makes good quarterbacks look terrible. They do it every single year, and it doesn't matter who's back there because they lose stars every year. Then they bring in rookies, guys that you're like, well, it's going to take them time to adjust and get better, and then boom, they become all pros. Trent McDuffie, perfect example. When Trent McDuffie came in, people were very concerned about having a rookie cornerback. Oh, geez. Right? They had some really good guys. And they were like, oh, geez, this is going to be tough to have this guy. He immediately came in and crushed a second rounder out of Washington, and he was awesome off the jump. And now he's one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. The Chiefs have a knack for finding those guys, and then Steve Spagnuolo has a great ability to take those young secondary guys and get them up to speed at lightning fast. I mean, just absolutely lightning. Nobody in the NFL expects their young secondary to be that good, that fast. But the Chiefs have multiple guys who are awesome, including Noah Williams. Williams had a big-time game last week. He's coming into his own, and that whole secondary has really stepped up. I mean, with Justin Reed gone, I think we were all a little bit worried, especially when we saw some blown coverages in the Chargers game. But that was game one. That was in Brazil. It's tough to go on the road into a neutral site for your first game, especially when you're coming off of a Super Bowl loss. I still think that had a lot to do with how the Chiefs came out in Brazil against the Chargers. I think the Chiefs came out and they were still a little bit reeling from losing to the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and then to go to a neutral site game right after the Super Bowl, which is then another neutral site with an extended halftime. I mean, there was a lot of similarities between a Super Bowl and that game in Brazil from a logistics standpoint. You have to travel, you have to spend the night, in a place you're not used to. You go out and it's a completely different atmosphere than a home or away game in the NFL. It's a neutral site game. You have the long halftime. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I'm sure were in the heads of the Chiefs. So I still look at that Chargers game and I'm like, I think especially in the first half, there was a bit of a hangover in that game. But now it looks like the Chiefs have slept off the hangover. An 0-2 start can kind of snap you back into it. An 0-2 start and then only being up by 3 points at halftime against the Giants, that'll kind of snap you back into yourself. It'll wake you up. I think the way Andy Reid woke up Travis Kelce with a little shoulder check, the rest of the Chiefs really woke up in that moment. And since that game, against the Los Angeles Chargers, the Chiefs secondary has been absolutely nails. And guys like Noah Williams are 100% why. And there's another guy in the Chiefs secondary who's flying under the radar who I really want to watch on Monday night against the Jaguars. We'll get to him later in the show. Now, Brett Veach is the guy we're going to talk about here. Also, Super Bowl halftime show. Whose fault is it that Taylor Swift isn't going to be there? We'll discuss that in a couple minutes. But first, the guy who needs to be given all the credit in the world for the Chiefs still having a dynasty for this long is Brett Veach. the general manager. Yeah, there's a lot of great credit to go around Clark Hunt, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Steve Spagnuolo. There's a ton of credit to go around. But for Brett Veach to continuously find people who can come into the Chiefs organization and be successful right away, to have guys in the secondary every year who are rookies who make huge splashes, to find wide receivers late in the first round, in the second round, all throughout the draft who can come in and be impactful right away, to build an offensive line this offseason, which was his number one priority, to go get Josh Simmons, who is absolutely fantastic so far at left tackle and really grown into that role and taken away any debate about who should be playing that position. The NFL is not built for teams to be this good for this long. So you have to give Brett Veach and his team all the credit in the world for continuously finding guys who can fit into the system, be successful early, and keep the Chiefs a dynasty, because it's hard. I mean, you're supposed to lose. The parity in the NFL is supposed to be so high that this organization, you can't be good for that long. But Brett Veach is so on his job and so on point that, yeah, the Chiefs are still a dynasty. And another big reason the Chiefs are still a dynasty is because the rest of the NFL is so inept. I mean, the Bengals gave all of their money to 3 players, and they can't figure out why they're not good. They let Josh Simmons drop to number 31 or 32 in the NFL draft. They let him drop all the way through the first round. This guy's already a legitimate big-time NFL left tackle. The Chiefs got him at the end of the first round. That means every team in the NFL passed on Josh Simmons and let him come to Kansas City. So while Brett Veach is outstanding and the entire Chiefs organization deserves all the credit in the world for continuing to make this dynasty top-notch, you also got to look at the other teams in the NFL and go, what in the heck are you doing? So that's part of it too. You're not supposed to be this good for this long, but if you look at the other organizations in the NFL and how bad they are at everything, like there are some organizations, the Bengals are the punching bag right now for the entire league. Just because when you watch them play, it looks like they're not even an NFL team. It looks like, my goodness, Joe Burrow might be the greatest quarterback of all time, because to even make that a passable team, you got to be doing some magic. Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, Zach Taylor. I like Zach Taylor. I think he's a good guy. I do think that the memes this week have been funny. You know, Zach Taylor without Joe Burrow is working, putting fries in the bag. I mean, it's hard to argue against because of how bad they are, but that's the thing. That's why the gratitude for the Chiefs. And we'll get to Taylor Swift here in a second. And then after Taylor, we're back into football. We're going to jump on Patrick Mahomes in this offense. But the thing that's so interesting about the Chiefs, and where the obvious credit, you want to spread it around, but the biggest moment in the Chiefs' history of their franchise, and this is true, aside from Lamar obviously starting the AFL and the merger, once you get past all of kind of that big picture stuff, the biggest moment in Chiefs franchise history is Lamar Hunt getting on a plane, going to Philadelphia, and going to Andy Reid's house and stopping Andy from getting on a plane to go to his interviews for the Chargers and the Cardinals and saying, I want you to be our guy in Kansas City. And he let him have all this control over who's going to be GM, who's going to run this, who's going to run that. Clark Hunt knew Philly was wrong to get rid of Andy Reid. And he went there to make sure that Andy Reid came to Kansas City and built something special. So there's a lot of credit to go around for who the Chiefs are, but at the top of that list is always Clark Hunt for making that choice in January of 2013. Can't say it enough times. I mean, we've talked about it before, of course. Been talking about it, I think, since the day it happened. But it can't be talked about enough. Clark Hunt is, I think, one of, if not the best owners in the NFL. Because I look around at all these other teams. Watch other teams, guys. I think sometimes Chiefs fans and fans of every team, you just watch the Chiefs. And then your bar for success becomes previous Chiefs teams, right? which is not necessarily fair because you have to look at other teams in the league. And there are so many inept teams, so many inept franchises that we do have to consistently be very grateful for the Kansas City Chiefs and very grateful for what Clark Hunt brought this franchise, because he took it from a franchise that was middle of the road to an elite level franchise in the NFL. Now, when you're talking about elite franchises in the NFL, you're talking about the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Chiefs, all in that same category. And that's incredible. So, yeah, that was a tangent, but I think it was an important one. All right, now we'll get to Patrick Mahomes and the one man who is really starting to find a groove with Patrick coming up here in just a few minutes. But first, Taylor Swift not going to perform at the Super Bowl. All reports say that the talks fell apart based on who is going to have the rights to the performance, to the video, to the audio. Taylor wants to own the rights to that. The NFL has always owned the rights to that. And she said, that's not what I do. I own the rights to my performances. They said, that's not what we do. And there was the impasse in negotiation. Here's the thing. The NFL screwed this up. They did. Taylor Swift has already done so much for the visibility of the NFL. They've grown their brand exponentially because of Taylor Swift. And I know it's kind of weird to look at a relationship that way, but that's the reality of the dollars and cents of what's going on in the NFL. For them to step up and say, no, we won't let you have the rights to the video and audio of your performance at the Super Bowl is a short-sighted and stupid decision by the NFL. Because it would be the biggest thing ever, despite all the people that are like, oh, no, we don't even want to see Taylor Swift, dude. Okay, cool. But you can't deny the numbers that would have came in. It would have done crazy numbers. So now the NFL's bringing in Bad Bunny, apparently, which won't do the same numbers because he's not the biggest pop star in the world. And the most highest earning pop star of all time. That's why Taylor Swift gets to dictate terms. That's why. And she's already done so much for the NFL. The visibility and the fans, the female fan base that she's brought in is off the charts. So I think from the NFL's perspective, they don't want to set some kind of precedent. Okay, fine. Set a precedent for not being as good as you could be. Because that's what you did by not letting Taylor Swift have the rights to the video and audio of her performance and getting her on the stage at the Super Bowl this year. A huge blunder, in my opinion, by the NFL. You could say, well, yeah, the NFL doesn't need her. Well, clearly they did a little bit because they pushed the heck out of her the second she started dating Travis Kelce. Don't tell me the NFL hasn't used Taylor Swift to gain fans. They absolutely 100% have. So for them to try to play hardball with her after that is a joke. And they should be embarrassed by how poorly negotiated they had, how poor their negotiations were when they had Taylor Swift at the table. That's an absolute joke and pathetic by every measure for the NFL. Bad Bunny will probably do a good job, though. I don't know. Name a Bad Bunny song. I liked him in Bullet Train. I've seen him act. I think he's great at acting. I couldn't name one. I couldn't name one song. I'm not a big Taylor Swift listener either, but I can name like 10 songs. Do you know why? Because she's Taylor Swift. Like, what are we talking about? It's not even in the same stratosphere. All right. That was more passion than I expected to come out over that conversation, but good for the love. It's crazy because of how much she's already done for the league. It's crazy to me because she's done so much for them just by showing up, by being an advocate, by being in the... I think that could have something to do with why we haven't seen her on TV lately and why she's been a little hiding because, hey, she brings legitimate brand value to the NFL. Pretending she doesn't is not only arrogant, it's stupid. Moving on. I got fired up, man. Moving on. We got to touch on the Ravens because we talked about what they were going to do last week. It happened, and people are still making excuses about it. So we'll discuss just for a second what happened with the Ravens, then dive into the Jags after that. But right now, never forget all the people that said Patrick Mahomes fell off. Never forget all these clowns wearing their clown makeup, honking their horn, spraying water out of their flowers, going, Patrick Mahomes is falling off. I think he's washed. Because these are people that don't watch games. These are people that don't pay attention to the big picture, only look at stat sheets and then pretend to know what they're talking about. Most of the people that I see in national media are no better than some clown playing fantasy football on the weekends because they're not doing their job. up. And that's why they said Patrick Mahomes fell off. That's why they tried to talk about Mahomes all last year not being good enough, because they aren't watching the games. They aren't seeing the beautiful play of one Patrick Mahomes II on a week in, week out basis. But now that the stat sheet's lit up, all those people are quiet as church mice. And that's the beauty. Don't ever forget, because it'll happen again. Trust me, some point over the rest of Patrick Mahomes' illustrious career, at some point, those people will come back and they will say all the same things they said last year, the year before, all the chirping about Patrick Mahomes. They will come back. So never forget how wrong they were on every level about Patrick Mahomes and his ability to dominate the NFL still in 2025. He's the best thing to ever happen to Kansas City. So stay steady on Pat. I'm telling you, stay steady. I'd give him, I want to give Patrick Mahomes the Nelson Art Gallery. I don't care. Just give it to him. Just to say thank you. We could just put someone could commission a beautiful Patrick mural outside of that'd actually be a pretty good idea. I was kind of kidding about giving him the Nelson, still am. But as far as commission a beautiful Patrick Mahomes mural at the Nelson Art Gallery, I don't know that hasn't already happened. Maybe it did. But if it hasn't, commission a big, beautiful Patrick mural. Have some amazing artists come in and make it, because for the love of everything, Patrick Mahomes deserves that, man. He deserves it. Now, we got to give credit to Matt Nagy as well, because Matt Nagy, for the last couple of years, his game plans haven't looked that crisp. They haven't looked very innovative or creative at all. And it felt like a lot of the time, the offensive game plan was too reliant on Patrick Mahomes. So after seeing what happened in the second half against the Giants and then the full game against the Ravens, we have to give Matt Nagy a lot of credit. Because if we're going to criticize him, when it doesn't go well, we got to turn that bus around and give him the credit and the congratulations when it does go well. Because otherwise, what are we doing here? We're hating is what we're doing. So Matt Nagy not only had a great game plan against the Ravens, he had Patrick Mahomes in the pocket confidently, which we haven't seen for a while because Patrick, frankly, hasn't had time to stand in the pocket confidently. So with the offensive line on point, Matt Nagy on point, and Patrick Mahomes being Patrick Mahomes, as he always has been and always will be, the Chiefs' offense is cooking. And that 100% means we have to give credit to Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Congratulations, Matt. Congratulations. And hopefully this week against the Jags, we see a very similar game plan where Mahomes is spreading the ball around, looking confident in the pocket, and they're using all three running backs creatively to continue to spread the defense, because that is what works so well for this offense this season. More on the Jags coming up here in just a minute, because we got to get to, the Jags, they have the most irrelevant NFL media coverage I've ever seen in my whole life. I'll explain why coming up in just a couple of minutes, because goodness. But first, the Ravens quit. We talked about it last week on the MidWeek Blitz. If you punch that team in the mouth, they will lay down. And now they have. They have Lamar Jackson out for 2 to 3 weeks. I'll tell you when your hamstring doesn't need 2 to 3 weeks to get better. When you walk off the field with zero favoritism to your hamstring. I don't believe, still, for a second, I don't believe that Lamar Jackson was really injured. I think he probably has a sore hamstring. Well, you're 1-3. A bunch of your players are hurt. None of your offense works outside of Lamar Jackson. And maybe you want a chance to look at Cooper Rush. Let's see what Cooper Rush does. There's a chance of that going on in Baltimore, and I think there's a disconnect between Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. I think there might be a disconnect with the whole team and John Harbaugh, because his message seemingly at this point is beginning to fall on deaf ears. And I know that Ravens fans want to bury their head in the sand on this, but it's clear there's a disconnect with John Harbaugh on that team. So Lamar Jackson, take 2 to 3 weeks. Who cares? Everyone's hurt. We're 1-3. Give Cooper Rush a chance to go in there and see what he does. And there could be a part of John Harbaugh that's happy to not have the Lamar Jackson show going on. And there's a conspiracy theory out there. I don't buy into this entirely, but I do think it's worth noting the conspiracy theory that this is a 2 to 3 week suspension for Lamar Jackson for quitting on the team. I'm dead serious. I've seen it out there. I don't know if I 100% agree with it. I don't think they would say it's actually a suspension to him. I think they might tell him it's a break, though. Hey, Lamar, do you want a break while our team doesn't have a chance to win games? That would be a fair statement, right? I don't necessarily buy into the idea that this is a punishment for Lamar Jackson, but it could be an option of the Ravens to sit there and say, hey, we aren't winning. You're our franchise quarterback. You have a sore hamstring. You're getting beat up by the opposing team's defensive line every game. Maybe it would be better if you sat down for 2 to 3 weeks. Let us get healthy. Let Cooper go out there and play for a few weeks, and then we'll come back. And we'll finish out the season. We'll try to get ready for next year. I'm dead serious. I think the Ravens are quitting. That's what all of this has felt like to me from the very beginning, is that this was a team that was sort of teetering on a toxic level to start the season, that a few Derrick Henry fumbles, a few issues from Lamar turning the ball over against the Chiefs, and suddenly Lamar's just throwing his helmet off. He's done. John Harbaugh's getting torn apart in the media every single week. Maybe this is a team that had a high quit potential from the very beginning of the season, and the Chiefs buried the Ravens. So never forget that either. Because the Ravens like to chirp a lot, especially their fans. If you see any of my comments on any social media platform, there's a lot of Ravens fans that like to chirp. But in the end, they quit. And the Chiefs are the ones that made them quit. The final nail in the coffin of the Ravens season. And they got it within 4 games, which means they were a weak team to begin with, frankly. Now, we'll discuss what will this game look like for the Chiefs and Jags. How close will it be? We'll get to the spread, all that stuff in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's talk about the Jags. The most irrelevant coverage in the NFL is the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a 3-1 team with one of the best running backs in the NFL in Travis Etienne. A lot to like about their defense in Jacksonville, yet all I ever hear about is how many offensive snaps and defensive snaps Travis Hunter took today. It's the most irrelevant coverage in all of NFL media goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I bet you didn't even know they were 3-1. I bet you thought they were 1-3 because all we ever hear about is what Travis Hunter's doing and what side of the ball he happens to be playing on today. The most poorly covered team in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it's one the Chiefs have to take seriously because there is a lot of things on that team to like. Trevor Lawrence isn't one of them. That's a potential big upside for the Chiefs. Trevor Lawrence he has a completion percentage under 60%. I think he has 5 touchdowns to 4 picks on the year. He does not look like what we had hoped as NFL fans Trevor Lawrence was going to be coming out of Clemson. He just doesn't look like that guy. He had a good year. Remember when they played the Chiefs in the playoffs and the Chiefs won that game, but it was a tough game. And that was only a couple of years ago. But now that team has just become an absolute disaster on every single level. They've got the quarterback position. Now, as far as the running game and the defense, that looks well built. They're a quarterback away. With a first overall pick in Trevor Lawrence, they're a quarterback away. That's a thing. How do you stop them? Well, Spags has a tall order with Travis Etienne. If the Chiefs defense can shut down Travis Etienne, they'll beat the Jags by a large margin. Trevor Lawrence has shown zero ability to even come close to being a formidable opponent as a quarterback in the NFL. Zero. Not for the last 2 years has he shown any ability to be big time. So all the Chiefs have to do is stop Travis Etienne. That is the recipe for the win. And then you have to put up some points against what is a very good Jacksonville Jaguars defense. But I think with Steve Spagnuolo at defensive coordinator, you have to feel a lot of confidence in what the Kansas City Chiefs can do in this game. Because you have a one-dimensional offense in a lot of ways. So if you force Trevor Lawrence to beat you, and with the way that secondary is playing, yeah, I think it's safe to say I feel pretty confident going into this game. I think it's safe to say most Chiefs fans feel pretty confident going into Monday Night Football against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, what do we have coming up next? Oh, we got to get to it. This kid in New York, adults acting like children. It's a whole thing. It's a sports thing. And then we have more to get to on this game with players to watch for the Chiefs and Jags. We have actually 3 players, 2 big ones, and then one we just have to discuss because he's just awesome. We'll get to all that in just a few minutes. But first, Chiefs-Jags. The Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites, 3.5-point favorites. And this will be a close game. I think it'll be a hard game. The Chiefs are going to have to really grind this out. The Jags are going to try to create an ugly football game. It's going to get gross in the trenches. They're going to try to make everything nasty because that's how the Jacksonville Jaguars win games. Trevor Lawrence can't put up big numbers, so you run the ball with Travis Etienne. You lean on the defense. If the Chiefs can counterbalance that by getting some deep balls from Patrick Mahomes to Tyquan Thornton to Xavier Worthy, stretch that defense out, get some points, get on top of the Jags early. That's the key to victory. It's the same key that it was against the Ravens. You got to get out to a fast start because they rely on the defense so heavily that if you can break through that, then the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in great shape in this game. Now, if they go in and dominate, they won't get the credit that they deserve. They should get more credit by dominating this game, but the Chiefs won't. Because it's the Jaguars, because of what I just said. Most of what the NFL world knows about the Jags is that Travis Hunter plays offense and defense. That's most of what the NFL world knows. Through no fault of the NFL world, it's just the way the team's covered. So there will be a lot of people who try to discount what should be a pretty dominant performance from the Chiefs, but don't let them. Because the Jags are a gritty team, they're a tough team, and this will be a test of toughness for the Kansas City Chiefs. No doubt, this will be a test of toughness. Now, the Chiefs are a more talented team. They're a better coached team. They have an incredibly huge advantage at the quarterback position. So everyone's going to pick the Chiefs to win this game. And when they win, people probably won't give them a lot of credit. But again, this is a test of toughness. It will not be an easy game. It will be a gritty game against the Jags. So under the radar. The Jags are just an under the radar team because they're Jacksonville. Because no one cares. It's like, oh, you're 3-1? Yeah, but you're Jacksonville. That's the way it's always been for the Jags. Even when they were really good a couple of years ago. Even when they were really good, like a lot of years ago with Blake Bortles. No one cares. They're Jacksonville. So that's why a lot of people look at Jacksonville as a worse team than they actually are. They're an under-the-radar 3-1 team. Granted, they don't have good quarterback play, which is why they're being kind of thrown by the wayside. But they're still going to be a tough game, and they still are a team with a lot of toughness. We get to players to watch here in just a moment, but first... Adults at sports games have to get their act together and stop being such pathetic human beings. Every week there's something going on, and for a poor Chiefs fan in New York who was at the Giants game, he thought he was going to get Patrick Mahomes' headband. And then some lady, grown adult woman, comes in and snatches it from him. And you see his face, and he just looks so heartbroken, and it's upsetting. But this isn't just happening in New York. This is happening everywhere. It's happening in Philly with the Phillies Karen. It's happening all over the place. I understand that during the pandemic, people lost some of their humanity, and the idea that we're all in this thing together has been completely broken down by U.S. society. But you got to get your head together and realize this is for the kids. This isn't for you. You greedy. This is not for you. You don't need a head. You need Patrick Mahomes' headband. Why? So you can turn around and sell it on eBay like a leech? This is for the kids. This is not about you. It's not about me. If you see a kid at a game, understand this is a canon moment. I mean, that headband moment, that was a core memory for that kid. I've had those when I was a kid. I remember when I was really little. I was about 4 years old. I met Marcus Allen when he was in Kansas City. Because I'm born and raised in Kansas City, no matter what the haters try to tell you. When I was 4 years old, I met Marcus Allen, and I was the only time in my life I've been truly starstruck. The only time was when I met Marcus Allen, because I was 4 years old, and I remember he reached out to shake my hand, and I looked at my parents like, am I allowed to do that? Because to me, he was like this untouchable figure. I'm 4 years old. Everybody in the city was huge Marcus Allen fans at that time, and everybody was like, this guy's amazing. So I'm like, this guy's amazing. What are you sure I can do that? Yeah. Really nice guy, by the way. Super nice guy. Signed stuff for me. We met him at, I think it was like the Overland Park convention center. I was 4, whatever. I don't remember. But he was a super good guy. And like that moment for me, I'll always remember it. I'll always remember meeting Vince Coleman, Kansas City Royal. Yeah, Vince Coleman. I loved stealing bases when I was a kid, man. It was like my favorite thing because I played a lot of football, baseball, and basketball when I was a kid. Those were my sports. So I remember meeting Vince Coleman. That was a huge deal. As an adult, I've met countless people, right? Not to name drop, but like, yeah, countless people. The Travis Kelce, I used to work at 610 Sports Radio. I was on Fesco in the morning. Then I joined SAG and had to change my name from Welch to Bassano. But at that time, I was interviewing the players every week. I don't really remember any of that. I interviewed Travis Kelce at his locker every game for 2 years. I remember he didn't like us. He was never excited to talk to the media. Not once in those years, which was, 16 and 17. Not once in those 2 years did Travis Kelce get excited to talk to us. That's all I really remember. But when I was a kid, meeting Marcus Allen, when I was a kid, meeting Vince Coleman, when I was a kid, and I sent in a Joe Montana trading card to the Chiefs facility asking Joe Montana to please sign the card. And the day he retired, he decided to, when he came back to Kansas City to announce his retirement, he decided to go through his fan mail and sign some things for people. I was one of those people he signed for. I got incredibly lucky. It came back in the mail, signed by Joe Montana. I went, I'll never forget that moment either. So when I say this is for kids, that's what I mean. As an adult, you're really going to remember that? That's going to be a huge core memory for you? No. You're just a selfish D-bag. Stop ruining things for the kids, man. It's terrible. I don't even think this is a soapbox moment. This is a human moment. Like, this isn't like a preachy thing. It shouldn't be seen as preachy to tell adults to start acting like adults and not stealing things from children at sporting games. It shouldn't be seen as a soapbox moment. It should be seen as a moment of common, goddamn human decency. But that's not what we have in this world, is it? We have people who are like, no, I need my home run ball because it fell one row in front of me and I couldn't catch it. So take the ball from your kid and give it to me. Oh, Patrick Mahomes gave you your headband? No, he didn't, because I'm bigger and stronger than you. You think she felt big and strong in that moment? You think she felt like, I'm great. I took it from that kid. What a pathetic race we're becoming as human beings. What a pathetic race we're becoming. Tell everybody you know the same thing that I'm saying, because that's how we fix it, by shaming people. Bring back bullying. Bully the people who take things from kids at sports games. That's who deserves to be bullied, because that's what they're doing. They're bullying these kids into getting their little sports memorabilia thing that will do what for you? Give you a week of happiness? That kid is going to remember it for the rest of their lives. So wake the hell up. All right. Sorry. That was probably more on that than I should have spent. So moving on. All right, we have players to watch this week. 2 players who are really important offensively and defensively for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then we'll end with one guy who just deserves some talk about on this show because he's just so awesome and he's taking his opportunity with Kansas City to the moon. We'll get to that to end the show. But first, 2 under-the-radar players to watch this week. Number 1, a guy who has looked great on film but doesn't get a lot on the stat sheet, so not enough people are talking about him. Chris Roland Wallace. He has been such a bright spot for the Chiefs defense on a secondary that's been shockingly good in Kansas City. And it might not be huge on the stat sheet right now, but when you watch the film, Chris Roland Wallace is everywhere. He's making big play after big play, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And he deserves to get a little bit, not only a little bit of credit, but to get his flowers. He is someone I would 100% say to watch against the Jacksonville Jaguars, because when you do watch him specifically on plays, he is always around the ball, always wreaking havoc, always causing problems for the offense. And the more that Roland Wallace gets into the Kansas City Chiefs system, the more he is going to elevate and become a big-time player. So that's an under-the-radar guy that everybody should be watching against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another guy under the radar to watch this week, Brashard Smith. We're seeing him start to get a little bit more carries, a little bit more opportunities. And the more we see of Brashard Smith, the more that I like Brashard Smith, because this Chiefs team is going to need all three running backs as the season goes forward. We like Isaiah Pacheco. We like Kareem Hunt. They do a lot of nice things. But what Brashard Smith brings to the table as a smaller back with a little more shiftiness, he's going to be a huge part of this running back committee that the Chiefs very clearly are going to need. I mean, this isn't a team that's going to have an every down running back emerge. This is Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, and now Brashard Smith working together in their specialized ways. They all have a specific set of special skills, and those skills are going to work together to really help the Chiefs offense elevate, especially when we get into playoff time. So Brashard Smith, I want to see him get even more carries, get even more involved in the offense. So by the time we're sitting here in November, he is a part of a well-oiled machine that is ready for January for the Kansas City Chiefs. More Brashard Smith. I think we brought it up last week too. That was more just about trying to help that running game. But now we're seeing he's getting those opportunities. And Andy Reid, I've brought this up before, but it bears repeating. Andy Reid does a great job of getting guys in position to be successful early on in their careers and build their confidence. We're seeing it with Brashard Smith right now. Every time, every game, we see Brashard Smith get a little more involved in the offense, get some plays at running back, get some end arounds. Every week, Andy Reid's giving him just a little bit more, which keeps his confidence high. It's not too much. It's not overwhelming for him. It's just building him little by little. We saw this with Isaiah Pacheco in 2022, and I think it's happening again with Brashard Smith, where Andy Reid's putting him in positions to build his confidence so that down the road, later in this season, come November, December, and especially January, Brashard Smith is going to be a monstrous part of the Chiefs' offense. I believe that too. I really do. I think Brashard Smith is going to be one of those guys who's just elevates. He has a lot of talent, especially for a 7th rounder out of SMU. But the reality here is he just fits Andy's offense so well. That's really what it is. I mean, he's talented, yes, but he was passed on by a lot of teams, passed on by everyone for 6 rounds. But the Chiefs got him, and I think a big part of it is that he just fits Andy's offense. Shifty running backs always do really well with Andy. All right, wrapping things up here on the Midweek Blitz, we got to get to Tyquan Thornton.
Passes right away, boom.
End zone bound, caught, touchdown, Kansas City. Tyquan Thornton.
I love talking about Tyquan. The reason I don't have much of a Tyquan take. I don't have much of a Tyquan Thornton take, but what I can tell you is when a guy scores a touchdown in 3 games in a row, we got to talk about him. Called TD Tyquan. Tyquan Thornton scoring a touchdown in each of the last 3 games, being a deep ball threat for Patrick Mahomes and continuing to wreak havoc on every defense he gets the opportunity to face. That's the kind of guy that could do something special in Kansas City. And you know what? He didn't fit in New England. Everyone said, well, it does well in camp in New England, but it never translates to the field. Well, when you got number 15 at quarterback, a lot of stuff that didn't used to translate suddenly becomes big-time plays. And that's what we're seeing out of Tyquan Thornton. Call him TD Tyquan because he's got 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games, and he shows 0 signs of stopping for the Kansas City Chiefs. Keep getting fired up about Tyquan Thornton, because he deserves all the hype. Because we were talking about him in training camp. He was the talk of St. Joe. Everybody there. If you're a Chiefs fan that doesn't pay attention during training camp, I totally understand. If you're somebody who only pays attention starting week 1, that's great. But guess what? During training camp, we were all talking about Tyquan Thornton. He showed so many flashes of being able to be a great deep ball threat and a dynamic wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes in St. Joe. So to see a guy get a shot, right? Because that's what Tyquan Thornton got in Kansas City. He was not some big commodity. When he came in, that was a shot for Tyquan Thornton. So for him to get that shot, capitalize on it in such a huge way in St. Joe, and then have that translate to what's going on in the season, that is an incredibly special individual and somebody that everybody should be excited about. Tyquan Thornton, TD Tyquan. He is elevating his play in Kansas City, and he is already an extremely important part of this Chiefs offense and somebody you will absolutely want to keep an eye on against the Jags and I think against every other team going forward. That's Chiefs Chase. My name is Mike Bassano. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, we will be live for Sunday's game, Chargers Commanders, with our best commander cheering going on. And then we'll be live again for the Chiefs on Monday Night Football at Jacksonville against the Jags. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your week and enjoy the game. I'll see you on the live.